Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this webinar session. I'm Tony Schönenberger. I'm the Executive Chairman of STARS. STARS is a global platform to discuss important developments which will impact the society as a whole, but also particularly our companies in the next few years. In this context, I'm pleased to inform you that STARS is right now in the middle of preparing two symposia, one in Singapore and one in Switzerland, and also preparing two study tours to Croatia and China. Please visit our website for more information. Today, we are continuing our webinar series on the circular economy, a must for business leaders. No doubt, this topic is extremely important for our businesses, but also for the society as a whole. So today, we have the privilege to talk to Dr. Al-Hamndou Dorsouma. Al-Hamndou is Manager of Climate and Green Growth at the African Development Bank in Abidjan, Ivory Coast. Hamndou, thank you very much for joining this session. Today, we are very much looking forward to your insights. I want to introduce you now to our moderator, Gordana Kirans. Gordana is the managing partner of a consulting company in Croatia. She is also on the supervisory board of Circular Economy. She's the president of the STARS Southeast Europe Alumni Chapter. And actually, this chapter will be inaugurated in May, combined with a STARS alumni study tour to Croatia. Again, please visit our website for more information. Gordana decided this very important series of totally 8 webinars on sustainability and the circular economy. And she is also moderating these sessions. So Gordana, thank you very much again. And the floor is yours.
Very welcome, and thank you, Tony, for the introduction. Warm welcome to our speaker, Al-Hamndou. I really look forward to talking to you and continuing our conversation that started in Brussels a while ago.
Yes, of course. I think last April in Brussels, we have been talking about it.
Exactly.
So I'm glad that it is now taking place.
Exactly. Glad to have you here in this webinar series. As Tony introduced, the circular economy, a must for business leaders. This is a global journey, and we are continuing this journey now in Africa, which is, as you and I know, actually a continent. But we Europeans sometimes refer to it as if it were a single country. Yet it's a very diverse continent with the Arabic-dominated north and the sub-Saharan south and middle part, which boasts with a rich mixture of languages, cultures, but also a very diverse economic progress. So this is actually in the midst of all this is that where you work, Al-Hamndou. So tell us about your work. And of course, this webinar series is about the circular economy. Your work specifically on circular economy. How is it to finance and support the circular economy on such a big and diverse continent?
Thank you very much, Gordana, first for inviting the African Development Bank to these very important discussions on circular economy. I recall our conversations, as I said, last year, and it was already something, to be part of the global community on circular economy. We have been attending the World Circular Economy Forum, and I see that, circular economy is gaining significant momentum as we continue that conversation. As you indicated, Africa is a very diverse continent of 54 countries, with some of them with some similarities, of course, but yet a lot of differences and diversities. These also includes diversity of economic activities, but also diversity of potentials on circular economy. While some countries have are richly endowed with natural resources. Others are not. And we see, for instance, that countries with rich natural resources, in particular non-renewable resources such as minerals and oil, are still struggling to effectively harness this natural capital potential. Similarly, we also note that those countries that are rich in renewable resources, such as forests, lands, water resources, are also facing challenges in sustainably manage those resources. So it is in this context that our work at the African Development Bank becomes very critical, being the first development finance institution in Africa in order to promote sustainable economic growth. I should also note that financing and supporting circular economy in Africa requires a range of means of implementation, including financing, technology, and also capacity, which are not always easy to mobilize due to the novelty of the circular economy concepts, but also due to the limited awareness on this concept. And we also note that lack of available financing for circularity is also something that that is hampering the uptake of this concept in the continent. But despite all of that, we are at the we know that we are at the early stage of fostering the implementation of circular economy in Africa. But there are great opportunities in several areas, several sectors, including renewable energy, food systems, construction, critical minerals, etc. And I will be glad to elaborate more on that later. Thank you.
That is a very wide range of topics that you have to cover in your work. Of course, that adds quite a bit to the complexity. To our participants, those of you who are familiar, you know that you are welcome to ask questions. I have the Q&A session window open here in front of me, and I will read your questions to Al-Hamndou. So please do join the discussion. It's more fun when you also contribute with your questions. In the meantime, I will continue with my own. So, of course, you mentioned all these resources, the renewable resources, but also the non-renewable ones. And some African countries now are also in the center of the energy transition, with iridium being a major metal for hydrogen, and so on and so on. So the importance is only going to increase for several countries that, of course, are within your work. There is a lot of development happening, but I hear from my participants in my training, I have quite a few participants from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Ivory Coast a little bit, then of course the Northern African part, Egypt, and so on. What are some of the promising developments you see in different countries, and how is this development spread? What are the drivers behind certain developments?
Okay, thank you very much. I think, as I said earlier, circular economy is really gaining significant traction across Africa now, and this is largely driven by the sustainability challenges that African countries are facing in order, for instance, to invest or to manage waste, because Africa is rapidly growing in terms of urbanization, and this comes with significant challenges, environmental challenges, also issues relating to resource efficiency. But one of the drivers is actually, the commitment that the countries made under international frameworks, such as the Paris Agreement on climate change. But also, there is an ongoing process of adopting an international treaty on plastic pollution. And many countries are part of those conversations, and they know that they have to comply with those international frameworks and standards. Particularly to respond to your point relating to countries that are making progress on, I think we see some promising developments in certain countries. For instance, in South Africa, there is a strong focus on waste management with several initiatives and policies taken by the government and also undertaken by the private sector. And these cover sectors such as renewable energy, but also mining and manufacturing industries. In Rwanda, for instance, we know that the government is enforcing some environmental policies and regulations. For instance, the ban of the plastic bags, and Rwanda is also investing in recycling significantly. They are also supporting several projects on the waste to energy sector, as well as promoting best practices in sectors such as agriculture and the built environment and construction. Another country where we see significant progress is Ghana, with a growing focus on recycling, in particular recycling of electronic waste, but also focus on sustainable practices in agriculture and manufacturing sectors. Morocco is another good example. Morocco is a leading country when it comes to renewable energy in Africa, but also on issues relating to water conservation, sustainable agriculture, but also best practices on in the textile industries. So these are also promising developments we see in this country. Another example which I find relevant is Kenya. We've also the government policy on banning the single-use plastics in certain areas, but also promoting circular economy in the fashion and the textile industries. Nigeria, the largest economy in the continent, is also making significant progress on waste management, energy, and agriculture, but also particularly promoting circular practices in the oil and the gas sectors, including initiatives to reduce gas flaring. Let me give another example. In the Francophone Africa, Senegal is also a country where we see some developments, promising developments on recycling, of course, waste management, of course, but also the country is exploring circular models in fishing and agriculture sectors. So many countries are making progress, but we see that there is still a lot to do in terms of creating the enabling environment for circular economy, and also mobilizing financing and technology in order to make it happen. So these are the examples that I have in mind, but certainly there are others that we can speak about, given that this is an evolving landscape. Thank you.
No, thank you. Fascinating. We do have a comment from the audience about the translation. We will continue, of course, in English. This video will be on YouTube, and I believe on YouTube there's an option of changing languages for subtitles. So do please look at it once we post on STARS program, on a STARS channel on YouTube, for the French translation. You just mentioned the Francophone part. Of course, English is not everywhere equally present. That is a very promising development, Al-Hamndou, all across the continent. And especially when you talk about sustainable fashion, of course, Morocco is one of the major suppliers for European textile industry. And that is, of course, influencing us on so many levels. We have, however, in a circular economy, one major mindset challenge. At least this is in Europe, and I got the impression that listening to you, that something like that is also present in these countries that you just mentioned, which are not going to diminish this progress. It's a great progress. But one of the things we are fighting with is that in many mindsets, circular economy equals recycling. And you and I know, of course, that this is not the case. The circular economy is way more. There is this story already the other day which said recycling is turning a book into a packaging, egg packaging, for example, which next step is then discarded. The circular economy is putting that book into a library where we can use it over and over again. So this is, in a simple words, the difference. So do you see the education supporting this mindset shift from recycling towards redesign, so that we actually start at the thinking phase and we implement maybe some old wisdom into the design, because your continent is rich in this incredible wisdom. Are you seeing any of these trends happening?
Yes, of course. I think I agree with you that there are several mindset challenges. It's not just in Europe. In Africa, those mindset challenges are common to many countries. There is this perception that secondary and reuse materials are not really of high value and quality. It's a perception, actually, and this perception is also being seen in the African continent. Therefore, such products do not yet attract much public attention. But I hope that, as you said, with a lot of focus on education, awareness, I believe that consumer behaviors would change in the future. Because in Africa, of course, circularity, although it is a new concept formally, but it's something that is already in the DNA, in the cultural DNA of the African people. We know that we have been always thinking about reusing materials, reusing the same processes in order to get them in the system at any time. And this is being done at very traditional level, but I think there are already some cultural aspects of circular economy that are existing in the continent that we could leverage on in order to educate people to change behavior, because we know that the way the linear economy is polluting our environment, the way the linear economy is affecting our social life is not sustainable. So creating awareness around the need for sustainability, the need for circularity is very critical. And I believe that education is very critical in order for us to achieve these sustainability goals. But in terms of challenges, I believe there are other challenges that are also important and that are limiting the penetration of circular economy in Africa. Let me elaborate on a couple of them. For instance, we spoke about the low awareness on an understanding of circular economy. It is a challenge, and especially the low understanding of the socio-economic and environmental benefits of circularity. And many people don't understand that yet. Also, another challenge is that governments do not prioritize yet circular economy and environmental sustainability in their national development agenda. This is also something that is compromising the implementation of circular approaches in Africa. Lack of infrastructure is another challenge, especially infrastructure for waste management and recycling. Many ways, but infrastructure to manage the waste is not there yet. But of course, lack of financing, lack of funding, lack of availability of funding instruments to support the circular economy is also another challenge I want to mention. Thanks.
Yeah, you are addressing a very critical topic. I always say the infrastructure is the infrastructure and financing, which of course are connected, because infrastructure also needs the financing as enabler, are key enablers of the circular economy. If we can't move secondary goods back and forth, we are not going anywhere. they're going to stay exactly where they are. So you are addressing a very important point. But back to the awareness. I remember talking to my delegates from Ghana about some of the old packaging solutions, for example, that are present within the wide range of different cultures in Ghana itself. For example, using natural materials, biodegradable materials to package food in the past. And kind of this mindset that this is considered what our grandparents used, which is not cool anymore. It's not in. So we prefer the new shiny European packaging, which of course we know where it ends goes if we don't capture it. So you see any appreciation for the old solutions that have been there all this time, but we just hidden in plain sight, and we didn't pay attention to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I said, there are still those perceptions, but I see some really promising developments, especially from the youth in Africa, coming with innovative ideas. For instance, when we were in Brussels last year, I got to meet with a small startup that showed me, the way they have developed a new packaging of food using biodegradable resources, especially coming from the cocoa plantations. And I found it really innovative. And there are several innovations like that taking place in the continent. It still is at a small scale level, but this shows the appetite for such products. What we need to do is now to get them well developed, tested, and also get them ready for commercialization. And I believe that those products are just looking for markets, and creating an opportunity for them to get to the market, get to the consumers is very important. Yeah. Using traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge, as we tend to call them, is very critical. And this knowledge, this wisdom, as you said, is already there in the African continent, in the traditional Africa. How can we leverage that? Can we harness that cultural potential and take it at another level, take it to the market so that people appreciate how products are designed from their own resources? So I think there is a lot of work to do in this area, I believe, but I'm comfortable to say that people are ready for it, especially the African youth. As you know, Africa is the continent with more than 70% of youth in the population. So, and they come with significant, this comes with significant opportunity really to harness this potential. And this will create also jobs, because, job creation is another issue in the African continent. Given that there are limited jobs available, I believe having the opportunity to help people create jobs, but also contribute to the sustainability agenda is something that we are really keen to encourage. Thank you.
Yeah. No, that's such a crucial topic. I'm also mentoring within the African Venture Capital Network, also supporting the young entrepreneurs in this topic. And yes, of course, having exactly these discussions with young entrepreneurs, exactly that. Appreciate your local knowledge. It has been there for hundreds of years. It has served our ancestors very well for a very long time. There's a question from our audience. With Africa's growing need to bridge its infrastructure gap while striving to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the key focus should be on circularity of the construction and built environment sector, a key factor in the CE drive. Thank you, Felix. Would you agree? Because the construction is also one of the biggest emitters of CO2. So yeah, we also, it's a decarbonization at the same time.
I agree. Africa is a continent where 70% of its infrastructure is yet to be constructed. So imagine if this infrastructure is built in a business as usual manner, and without taking into consideration circularity and sustainability principles, we will be following the same route that other continents have followed to develop. So closing the Africa's infrastructure gap is important, but yet this has to be done in a very sustainable way in order to reduce significantly emissions from the construction sector. But also, I think this is also an opportunity for Africa to do things differently, to take advantage of the existing environmental technologies in order to improve processes in the way infrastructure is designed and constructed. One aspect, of course, this takes us to the education issue we discussed just a few minutes ago. We need to create, awareness across all levels in the African continent, starting with schools, training our engineers on how designing new infrastructure projects, how designing such projects while taking into consideration those circularity and sustainability principles. I think there is a huge gap also in terms of awareness across the industry, because I have been talking recently to, actually I published a blog article on this issue three months ago, just before the COP29 in Baku, on the need for Africa to rethink the way we incorporate sustainability and circularity in the design of new infrastructure. So, and one of them is to not only to improve the standards, but also to educate new engineers on these aspects. The old school does no longer help, because the principles that were applied in the time have driven to the high increase of emissions from the construction sector, and this cannot continue. And this is where we also need to intervene. As the African Development Bank, we are very aware of that issue. That's why we are engaging significantly in awareness raising campaigns, but also when we develop our new infrastructure projects, we take into consideration these sustainability and circularity principles and standards.
Fascinating. If you send us the link, we can actually put it into the comments once we post a video on YouTube. So our audience, whoever is watching on YouTube, the video can actually go directly to your article and read about it in more depth.
We'll do that.
Al-Hamndou, the African Development Bank is actually championing the circular economy through the African Circular Economy Facility and the Africa Circular Economy Alliance. So how is this collaboration realized in Africa?
Yes, you are right. Over the last years, we have been championing new programs on circular economy. These include the Africa Circular Economy Facility, but also the Africa Circular Economy Alliance. The facility, for instance, is a multi-donor trust fund that was established in 2022 in collaboration with some of our partners, including the government of Finland, but also the Nordic Development Fund. So we started with a seed capital of about 4 million euros, but we are now increasing the capital. Recently, in December last year, we got additional contributions from Finland again, and from the Coca-Cola Foundation. So the size of the fund is growing. The facility is actually structured around 3 key components. The first one is policy support. As I speak, we are supporting 5 African countries to develop their national circular economy roadmaps. These include Benin, Cameroon, Chad, Ethiopia, and Uganda. We are aiming to increase the number of countries this year. Also, the second component is on advocacy, especially leveraging on the work of the African Circular Economy Alliance to create an African circular economy narrative. in building on the peculiarities of the continent, taking into consideration the diversities that we spoke about, how Africa positioned itself as a key player on the circular economy agenda is something that is very important in our work on advocacy. And so this component is addressing that. And we are happy to work closely with the African Circular Economy Alliance, which is an alliance created, promoted, established by the African government themselves. And the African Development Bank is hosting the secretariat of this alliance. So we are promoting this advocacy work together in partnership. The last component is on business development. As I said earlier, there is a huge need in supporting circular models and the solutions, especially coming from enterprises and the startups. So we have we are currently implementing what we call the Afri Circular Innovators Program. Currently, under this program, we are supporting 30 startups in 3 countries, Rwanda, Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana, in order for them to provide them with technical assistance and mini grants in order for them to develop, test, and commercialize their circular businesses. So this is these are the programs that we are currently implementing. It is still new. We started just 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, but we see that there is a huge interest. We see a lot of demands from our countries and our clients for them to get support from the African Development Bank on their solutions. So that's why we also look for partnerships in order to scale up the work that we are doing currently under those 2 programs that I have just spoken about. Thanks.
That is such an important work, and so much diversity in work itself. How many elements from policy development, of course, that has to create the framework to supporting entrepreneurs who should thrive and create jobs, and because this is circular economy. So, of course, you mentioned this earlier. The job creation is crucial. When we talk about such a vibrant continent, we know this from Brussels, Al-Hamndou, we could go on forever, because there is just so much diversity and so much to say about the development on your continent and within the bank, within the bank and the work you are supporting. But we are at the end with our time, and I would just like you mentioned African narrative. If we refer to that, what would be your vision for Africa?
Thank you very much. This is a very important question. I think my own vision for Africa is really that Africa should continue to promote circular economy, and because the future of circular economy, in my view, is promising for the continent. We see a lot of potentials and opportunities, as I mentioned earlier, that are yet to be harnessed in a wide range of areas, including regenerative agriculture, integrated waste management, sustainable built environment. Also areas such as the circular manufacturing. We focus on improved design of products. It's a very important aspect for circular economy. It's not just about waste management, but also promotion of circular approaches in the textile value chains. So I believe that in the future, having circular economy mainstream in Africa's development agenda, for me, is very important. And this is because I believe my vision is for Africa to shift away from the polluting and sustainable linear economy model to a more circular and sustainable one. For this to happen, Africa needs to strongly harness its potential using its natural resources, its rich natural resources, including critical minerals that are now usually needed for the global green transition. I believe Africa can no longer continue to export raw materials. but without adding any value, without any value creation, value addition, value retention. I believe it's time for Africa to really rethink that economic development model to make it more sustainable, and by putting circular economy at the center of its economic development growth. This is my vision for the continent. Thank you.
That's a beautiful vision. We will leave it at that. Thank you so much for your insights, Al-Hamndou. I believe if our audience wants to find you, you are on LinkedIn. Is that the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. They can find me there.
Okay, thank you indeed for your insights, and of course all this sharing with us today, the incredible work you're doing within the African Development Bank. I of course wish that this vision becomes true for your continent. To our audience, thank you for being with us today, and we hope to see you again in 2 weeks' time. We are now coming closer to home. Next 2 sessions will be in Europe. This is an incredible journey that is bringing us together in so different parts of the world with the common denominator, the circular economy. So we will continue having these conversations a few more times. And so enjoy the rest of your Friday, wherever you are, the rest of your afternoon, evening, and in case you are observing the holy month, I wish you Ramadan Kareem. All the best.
Thank you. Happy having talked to you. Thank you.